At a holiday party, I said, I can't wait for the family reunion tomorrow. My sister looked away. My brother scoffed. What reunion? I laughed nervously. The one mom's been planning for months. My sister muttered. She canceled it after what you did. Then my mom stood and screamed. You think we can face the family after your affair with your boss's wife? My phone buzzed. My boss had sent a video. The holiday party was winding down. The living room, once filled with laughter and clinking glasses, had settled into a low murmur of conversations. The scent of pine and cinnamon hung thick in the air, a product of Mom's obsessive need to make every Christmas feel like the ones from our childhood. The fireplace crackled, casting long shadows across the room. It was familiar, warm, the kind of night that made you forget how far apart everyone had grown. I swirled the bourbon in my glass and leaned back against the couch, feeling the slow, numbing warmth spread through my limbs. It was nice to be home, even with all its usual complications. Maybe this year, things would be different. Maybe we could forget old grudges, move past the tension that always seemed to bubble beneath the surface. So I smiled and said, I can't wait for the family reunion tomorrow. Silence. It took me a second to register the shift in the room. My sister, Miranda, suddenly found interest in the half-empty wine glass in her hand. My younger brother, Jake, snorted under his breath and took a slow sip of his beer. What reunion? Jake asked, his voice flat. I frowned. The one Mom's been planning for months. Miranda let out a slow exhale, rubbing her temples. She canceled it. What? I let out a short laugh, setting my glass down. When? Why? Miranda didn't answer. Mom, who had been standing near the kitchen, tensed. Her shoulders rose, her hands tightening around the dish towel she was holding. Jake shook his head, muttering, After what you did. I blinked. What are you talking about? Mom turned to face me, and the look on her face, disgust, disappointment, something deeper, something raw, made my stomach turn before she even spoke. You think we can face the family after your affair with your boss's wife? Her voice rang through the room, louder than it should have been, or maybe it just felt that way because of the way my chest suddenly tightened. The blood drained from my face. I heard the words. I understood them, but they didn't make sense. Affair? With who? My heart pounded against my ribs. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. A message from my boss. A video. The moment I pressed play, my entire world shifted. A hotel room, dimly lit. The unmistakable outline of two bodies tangled together on a bed. The sheets were messy, twisted. The sound of low, breathy laughter. The camera moved just slightly, giving me a clear view of the couple. And there I was. Or at least, someone who looked exactly like me. Pulling a woman close, his hands gripping her waist, his mouth pressing against hers. Claire Donovan, my boss's wife. The video ended. The room around me blurred. My fingers tingled as I gripped my phone too tightly, my breathing uneven. This had to be a joke, a deep fake, something, anything, except the truth it claimed to be. I looked up. Mom was watching me with tear-filled eyes, her mouth pressed into a hard line. Miranda still refused to look at me. Jake, on the other hand, was watching me closely, his expression unreadable. I didn't, my voice cracked. I swallowed hard. Don't, Miranda said, her voice quiet but firm. Jake scoffed. Don't what? Lie. I'm not lying, I said, my voice rising. I don't even remember this night. I don't even know when. Mom let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her voice was thick, shaking. Claire showed that video to your boss. She told him everything. And now, her voice broke. She took a step back, as if the weight of it all was too much. Now you've lost your job, your reputation. My stomach dropped. I looked down at my phone. Another message. From my boss. You're done here, Mason. Don't come back to the office. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a family scandal. This was my entire life collapsing in real time. The air in the room felt suffocating. My pulse pounded in my ears. I could see them all watching me, waiting for some kind of response, some admission, some excuse. I pushed myself to my feet, nearly stumbling. I need a minute. No one stopped me as I walked out. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. My family barely spoke to me. Conversations went quiet when I entered the room. Miranda avoided me entirely. Jake looked at me like I was something rotten that had been left out too long. Mom refused to meet my eyes. I barely touched my phone. When I did, it was a mistake. My name was already circulating online, a quiet scandal that was quickly picking up speed. I had messages from former coworkers, old college friends, even my ex-wife, all demanding to know what the hell was wrong with me. But here was the thing. I knew I hadn't slept with Claire Donovan. So who the hell was in that video? I had made mistakes before. Plenty. My marriage had ended because of them. I had spent the last few years drinking too much, making reckless decisions, burning bridges. But this wasn't me. And if it wasn't me, who the hell was it? Claire wasn't answering my calls. My boss had blocked my number. So I went straight to the source. I found Claire at her country club, sipping a martini on the patio, her manicured nails tapping lazily against the stem of her glass. She didn't even look surprised to see me. "Mason," she said smoothly, "you have some nerve." I sat down across from her, my hands curling into fists on the table. "I didn't sleep with you." Claire tilted her head, studying me like I was an insect under a microscope. "Is that so?" I leaned forward, my voice low. "You know I didn't." Her lips curved into a small, unreadable smile. I pulled out my phone and pressed record. "Tell me the truth, Claire." She glanced at the screen, then back at me. And then she leaned in, dropping her voice to a whisper. "If you keep pushing," she murmured, "you're going to regret it." A chill ran down my spine. It took me a week to piece it together. Claire had been having an affair. That much was true, but not with me. With someone who looked exactly like me. And that was when I found him. A man with my face. A stranger. Or at least I had thought he was. Until I learned the truth. And the truth was far, far worse than anything I could have imagined. The truth didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, in fragments, in things that didn't quite add up. It was in the way Claire looked at me. Calm, unreadable. Not like someone who had been caught lying, but like someone who had planned every single detail. It was in the way my boss cut me off without hesitation, as if he'd been waiting for a reason. It was in the video itself. Something about it felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. So I did what I should have done from the beginning. I started digging. It wasn't easy. My name is toxic now. People didn't want to be associated with me. Former coworkers refused to answer my calls. Friends I had known for years suddenly had excuses not to meet up. Even Miranda, who had always been the one to defend me, barely spoke to me anymore. I was alone in a way I had never been before. But that was fine. I didn't need anyone. I just needed the truth. I spent hours watching the video, studying every frame, every shadow. It made me sick to my stomach, but I forced myself to keep looking. The man in the video moved like me, carried himself like me, even had my damn mannerisms, the way he ran a hand through his hair, the way he tilted his head slightly when he listened. But it wasn't me. It was someone pretending to be me. And that meant someone had set me up. I scoured the internet, searching for anything that could explain it. Deepfakes? Possible, but unlikely. This wasn't some grainy, AI-generated mess. This was real footage. Someone had been there. Someone had been with Claire. And then, a week later, I got my first real break. An email. No sender name, no subject line. Just a single sentence. "You're not crazy. Look into Derek." I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. Derek? I didn't know anyone named Derek. But whoever had sent the email had made a mistake. They had left behind an IP address, barely hidden. It took me 2 hours to trace it. And when I did, my stomach dropped. The email had come from inside my company. Someone at work had sent this. It took another 2 days to get my hands on employee records. Officially, I had been locked out of everything. My access was revoked the second my boss fired me. But companies are careless, and I still had an old login that got me into the archives. I searched for the name Derek. Only one hit. Derek Vaughn, hired 6 months ago. A low-level accounts analyst. A name I had never heard before. A face I had never seen. Except, I had seen him. Because when I pulled up his employee badge photo, my blood ran cold. He looked exactly like me. Not similar. Not vaguely familiar. Exactly. Same jawline. Same eyes. Same slight crookedness in the nose. It was like looking at a distorted version of myself. Someone who had lived a slightly different life. Someone who had made different choices. My hands trembled as I scrolled through his information. I needed more. An address, a phone number, something. And then, buried in the emergency contact section, I saw it. Mother's name, Evelyn Carter. My mother's maiden name. My mother's name. And suddenly, everything clicked into place. Derek Vaughn wasn't just some guy. He was my brother. The realization left me numb. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Mom had never mentioned another child. Never once. And she wasn't the kind of woman who would keep a secret like that. Was she? I thought back to my childhood. The long silences. The way she'd get this distant, haunted look sometimes, like there was something just out of reach, something she couldn't bring herself to say. Had it been this? Had I been living my whole life with a shadow I never knew existed? I needed answers. I needed to talk to Mom. But first, I needed to find Derek. It wasn't hard. I knew where he worked. I knew his schedule. I waited outside the office building, watching as people filtered out in the evening rush. I almost missed him at first. He didn't look exactly like me in person. He was thinner, a little sharper around the edges. His hair was shorter, and his posture was different, tense, guarded. But it was me, a version of me that had walked a different path. And when he finally looked up, when our eyes met across the street, something passed between us. Recognition. Not surprising. Not confusion. Like he had been waiting for this moment. For me to find him. He smiled. And then, before I could move, he turned and walked away. I followed him. Through the crowded streets. Past shops closing for the night. Through the quiet, dimly lit alleys. He knew I was behind him. He didn't speed up. He didn't run. He just led me further and further from the crowds. Finally, he stopped behind an old warehouse, leaning against a brick wall, lighting a cigarette. I stopped a few feet away, my hands shaking. "Who the hell are you?" Derek exhaled smoke, watching me with calm amusement. "You already know." The sound of his voice sent a chill through me. It was my voice. A slight difference in tone, but mine. I swallowed hard. "Why? Why go through all this? Why set me up?" Derek smiled faintly. "Because you had everything, and I had nothing. I felt sick. So, you decided to take my life? Ruin it." He shrugged. "Fair trade, don't you think?" I took a step closer. "You're my brother." The words felt foreign, impossible. Derek's smile widened. "Oh, now we're family?" He tilted his head. "Where was my family when I was growing up in foster care? When I was bouncing from home to home while you lived your perfect little life?" I opened my mouth, but I had no words. I didn't know. I didn't even know he existed. "Mom never told me," I said finally. Derek's expression flickered, just for a second. "Of course she didn't." He allowed a soft laugh. "She didn't want you to know about her mistakes." I clenched my fists. "This isn't my fault." "No," Derek agreed. "But it's still your problem now." And with that, he flicked his cigarette onto the pavement, turned, and disappeared into the night, leaving me standing there, staring after him, with the sinking feeling that this was only the I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Derek's words rattled in my head, replaying over and over. "You had everything, and I had nothing." I had spent my whole life believing I was an only child, believing my mother had never hidden anything from me. And yet here was a man with my face, my blood, who had been out there all along, angry, waiting, watching. And now he has destroyed my life. For what? Revenge? Jealousy? Did he really believe I had stolen something from him? By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was rising. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the house I had grown up in. It didn't look the same anymore. It felt smaller, like a place I had long since outgrown. I needed to talk to Mom. I needed the truth. The house was silent when I stepped inside. Mom was in the kitchen, her back to me, stirring a cup of coffee. She didn't turn around when she heard me come in. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching her. I had always seen my mother as strong, unwavering. But now, in the quiet morning light, she looked smaller, more fragile, like she was carrying the weight of something far heavier than I had ever realized. I cleared my throat. "I know about Derek." Her hand jerked. The spoon clattered against the counter. Slowly, she turned to face me. Her face was pale, drawn. She didn't ask how I found out. She didn't ask who told me. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "Oh, Mason." Something in her voice made my stomach twist. I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Tell me the truth." She hesitated. Then, she sank into the chair across from me, folding her hands in front of her like a woman about to confess her sins. "I was 19, she said, her voice quiet, distant. "Too young, too naive. I met your father that summer. He was charming, reckless. I thought I was in love." I stayed silent. She let out a slow breath. "When I got pregnant, he ran. I had no one. My parents, they weren't supportive. They told me I had ruined my life." She swallowed hard. "So, when I gave birth to twins, I flinched." "Twins," she continued. "I wasn't ready for one baby, let alone two. And my parents made it clear I couldn't keep both." I gripped the edge of the table. "So you gave Derek away." Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't like that. I thought I was doing the right thing. The adoption agency promised he would go to a good family, a stable home." She let out a shaky breath. "But that didn't happen." A cold weight settled in my chest. She wiped at her face. "I thought about him every single day. I wanted to find him, but I was terrified. What if he hated me? What if I had ruined his life?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Well, you did." She flinched. I didn't care. I was too angry, too raw. I pushed back from the table and stood. "You lied to me my entire life." She reached for my hand. "Mason, please." I pulled away. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get away from all of it. I drove. Again. For hours. I didn't even know where I was going until I ended up in front of a rundown motel on the edge of town. Derek was waiting for me. He was leaning against the railing outside a second-floor room, smoking a cigarette, as if he had known I would come. I got out of the car, slamming the door behind me. He smirked. That didn't take long. I stormed up the stairs. "Why the hell did you do this?" His expression didn't change. "Do what?" I clenched my fists. "You know exactly what." Derek flicked his cigarette away and exhaled slowly. "I didn't do anything, brother. I just gave you a little taste of what it's like to lose everything." A muscle in my jaw twitched. "You set me up." He tilted his head. "Did I?" I wanted to hit him. I had never wanted to hit someone so badly in my life. But I forced myself to breathe, to think. "You made sure Claire met you," I said slowly. "You made sure she believed you were me." I took a step closer. "You wanted me to lose my job, my reputation, my family. Derek's smirk widened. And it worked, didn't it? I stared at him. I wasn't just looking at my brother. I was looking at someone who had spent his whole life planning this moment. And that terrified me. I left without another word. Because suddenly I understood something. Derek wasn't done. This wasn't over. Not even close. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Derek's face was burned into my memory. That smug smirk, the way he spoke with such certainty, like he had already won. But what did winning even mean to him? Was it enough that he had wrecked my life? That he had cost me my job, my reputation, my family? Or was there something more? Because I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about revenge. This was about control. And I had this sinking realization that Derek wasn't finished. Not yet. I woke up to a phone call. Miranda. I hesitated before answering. I hadn't spoken to her since I found out the truth. I wasn't sure if she even wanted to talk to me. I pressed the phone to my ear. Miranda? Her voice was tight. Are you home? I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Yeah. What? Silence. Then, she exhaled sharply. You need to check the news. I frowned. What? Just do it. The call ended. Dread pooled in my stomach as I reached for my laptop. I had avoided the media ever since the scandal with Claire exploded. I didn't want to know what people were saying about me. But as soon as I opened the homepage, my breath caught in my throat. Local business executive caught in scandal. And it's not his first time. There was a picture of me, taken from my company profile, and beneath it a second image, grainy, low quality. A man walking out of a hotel with a woman clinging to his arm. The man looked like me. But I knew it wasn't. Derek. My hands shook as I clicked on the article. The accusations were brutal. Affairs. Questionable business deals. A history of unethical behavior. Lies. All of it lies. And yet, they weren't treating it like a rumor. They were treating it like a pattern. Like they had been waiting for an excuse to dig into my past. I scrolled through the article, my pulse hammering. There were quotes from anonymous sources. He's always been like this. No one was surprised when the affair came out. He thinks he's untouchable. My stomach turned. People I had worked with, people I had trusted, they were feeding the fire. And Derek had given them the match. I drove straight to Miranda's house. She answered the door before I even knocked, her expression tight with worry. I pushed past her, pacing the living room. Did you see what they're saying about me? She folded her arms. Yeah. I turned to her. You don't believe it, do you? She hesitated. And that hesitation was like a punch to the gut. Jesus, Miranda. I ran a hand through my hair. You've known me my whole life. Do you honestly think I'm capable of half the things they're saying? She let out a slow breath. I don't know, Mason. I mean, I want to believe you, but she trailed off. I shook my head in disbelief. But what? She looked at me, her gaze unreadable. But Derek is real. I stared at her. What the hell is that supposed to mean? She shifted her weight. It means maybe you didn't do any of this. But maybe, just maybe, this is happening for a reason. I let out a bitter laugh. A reason. Her expression hardened. You've made a lot of bad choices, Mason. Maybe you didn't sleep with Claire. Maybe you didn't do the things in that article. But can you really say you're blameless? My hands clenched. So that's it? You think I deserve this? She sighed. I think Derek deserves answers. And if this is how he's choosing to get them, maybe you should ask yourself why. I stared at her, my heart pounding. She wasn't on my side. Not really. Maybe she didn't want to believe the accusations. But deep down, she wasn't sure. And if my own sister wasn't sure, then no one was. I left her house feeling worse than before. Because it was clear now, I was alone in this. If I wanted to stop Derek, if I wanted to get my life back, I couldn't count on my family. I couldn't count on anyone. I had to do this myself. I spent the next few days gathering everything I could on Derek. His work history, his movements, his connections. He had been careful. He had kept a low profile, avoided social media, left barely any digital footprint. But I found something. An old address. A rundown apartment in a bad part of town. I wasn't expecting him to still be there. But I had to check. I drove there that night. The city lights fading behind me as I crossed into a part of town where the streets were cracked, where the buildings leaned with age, where people didn't ask questions. The apartment building was a squat, gray structure with flickering hallway lights. I climbed the stairs, my heartbeat steady but heavy. I knocked on the door. Silence. I knocked again, harder. Footsteps. And then the door cracked open. Derek stood there, his face unreadable. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then he smiled. A slow, knowing smile. You just don't give up, do you? I stepped forward, my jaw tight. You're not getting away with this. Derek chuckled. Oh, Mason. He shook his head. I already have. And then, before I could react, he opened the door wider, revealing the gun sitting on the table behind him. And just like that, the air in the room shifted. I had been so focused on the lies, the deception, the games he was playing, I hadn't considered how far he was willing to go. Derek wasn't just trying to ruin my life. He was trying to erase me entirely. I stared at the gun on the table. It wasn't pointed at me. Not yet. But its presence alone shifted everything. Derek leaned against the doorframe. watching me like he was waiting to see how I'd react. I forced myself to stay calm. That's supposed to scare me? Derek smirked. Doesn't it? No. It pissed me off. I had spent the past few weeks watching my life fall apart, losing everything because of him. My family had turned their backs on me. My reputation was in ruins. My career was gone. And here he was, standing in front of me, as smug as ever, like he had already won. Like I was just supposed to accept it. I clenched my fists. I know what you did, I said. I know you set me up. I know you used Claire. I know you played me. Derek didn't even blink. And? I took a slow breath, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. I have proof. That made him pause. Just for a second. His smirk wavered just a little. Bullcrap. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. I tapped the screen and turned it toward him. I watched his expression shift as the recording played. His voice. His words. I had been recording every conversation since the moment I tracked him down. I just gave you a little taste of what it's like to lose everything. Fair trade, don't you think? You had everything. And I had nothing. His face darkened. You son of a freak. I slid the phone back into my pocket. I already sent copies to my lawyer. To the media. To my former boss. To Mom. To Jake. To Miranda. I took a step closer, watching him carefully. They all know now. His hands curled into fists. You're bluffing. I smiled coldly. Try me. For the first time since this all started, Derek looked uncertain. And I realized something. He wasn't as untouchable as he wanted me to believe. I didn't wait for him to make a move. I turned and walked away. I half expected him to grab the gun and shoot me in the back. But he didn't, because he knew it was over. By the time I got back to my car, my phone was already blowing up. Calls. Messages. People are finally listening to me. And as I drove away from that apartment, I knew Derek had spent his whole life trying to destroy me. But in the end, he had only destroyed himself.